Welcome to Don't Fear the Weight podcast with your host Vicky Masita, bringing together science and personal experience.
Feel nervous again.
Nervousness. Okay, so Mr. Luke Andrews is joining me again on the Exclusive Titan podcast on the 4th of April. So it has been a while since we've had a chat, hence the reason why he just said, oh my God, I'm so nervous. And it's also because of the simple fact that he has lost an extreme amount of weight, of body fat because I have been kicking his ass. So first of all, Luke, how the devil are you?
Lonely.
Oh, why are you lonely? I'm not there.
Okay. No, I'm good. I'm very well, thank you.
Very good. Very good.
How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. So give us a little bit of an update about what you are doing with yourself at this moment. Obviously, you're still cutting weight now. You had a nice little diet break recently, didn't you?
I did. Yes, I've thoroughly enjoyed that because I was actually eating some food again in my eyes. With your strictness out the window for a month was quite pleasant. But yeah, it was all good. Yeah, back on it now, obviously. I'm starting to lose the timber a bit more, which is always handy for when you're trying to reduce your body fat. And yeah, just get back into the swing of things, to be honest. But, yeah, and yourself? How's your shoulder?
Well, do you know what? The shoulder is actually really improved. So the shoulder is now no longer an issue. I'm managing to actually overhead press quite a lot more now, which is good. Obviously nowhere near where I was previously before I fucked it up. But it is much better now. So this is a lesson to everybody out there. If the doctor says go and have a cortisone injection, ignore them. Just ignore them. Just don't do it. 9 out of 10 cases of people who have a cortisone injections, 1 don't work or 2 make it worse. So we're just going to stave off the cortisone injections from now. Any hoozle. So moving swiftly on into the Exclusive Titan podcast, we put out some questions to you lot on the socials, and we are here to answer them. So we've had a fair few ones, which is quite nice. So I think what I'd like to do is actually start with a training one, because I've been doing most of the talking and I'm out of breath and want to have a drink of me tea. So why don't we start from the bottom? This is a question from Katie, basically stating, what are your thoughts on having to work out with DOMS? So this is delayed onset muscle soreness. Obviously, if you didn't know, Luke, that's delayed onset muscle soreness.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I will Google that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Actually, I better start Googling the answers now.
Indeed, yeah. What I would like to clarify, however, is the difference between muscle soreness and delayed onset muscle soreness, first of all, because there's 2 completely different elements here, isn't there? So why don't we just get into the aspect of that first?
Go on then.
Okay, so all right, then I'll do the talking then. So true DOMS, as in like true DOMS, which is classed as delayed muscle soreness, that's the big giveaway. Okay, so DOMS is going to be muscle soreness that doesn't actually come on until the 2nd day. If you get home and you're like, oh my God, I've got jelly legs and that kind of thing, yeah, that's fatigue, you know. But realistically, true DOMS don't appear until day 2, and then they can last for a good couple of days as well. So in terms of just training with a little bit of muscle soreness, what's your viewpoint on that? So let's do muscle soreness and training with that first, and then obviously true DOMS.
Well, it's good that you just clarified that, to be honest, because I think people do tend to get mixed up, and they also tend to get too scared of muscle soreness, in my opinion, when it comes to training and when to train next. I think, Katie's alluded to the fact that if you're doing legs and you've done legs on Tuesday, and then she says that on Wednesday she can't, or her friend can't literally walk up the stairs without crying, would you train them again Thursday? I'd probably wait till Thursday.
Exactly right.
Would I train the next day? I mean, there's 2 schools of thought. That probably if you've made your legs that sore, then it probably would be wise to look up why you made them that sore in the first place. The body needs to obviously to respond to a stimulus and adapt to that stimulus. But if that stimulus is such that it's causing a tremendous amount of muscle damage, muscle soreness, then we're probably overstimulating it. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if you literally can't walk up the stairs on Wednesday or the day after you've done your leg training, then the recovery factor of your program isn't being taken into account. And also we know that it's when you rest and it's when you eat and it's when you sleep that we're providing the tools for our muscles to adapt and grow. So if we're still going to be struggling to train on Thursday or Friday, then like I said, we need to make sure what we're doing on Tuesday needs to be looked at. But I wouldn't go too heavy. I would go probably active recovery route. Help try and facilitate that recovery that I've alluded to. So yes, I would potentially train him just for blood flow reasons and just to get that response going regarding getting back on track and getting your muscles working again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a time where we had this discussion last time, wasn't it? Based on squats and saying, well, if your legs are sore, just go and do some volume squats, but not heavy volume and high volume. You know, you're talking about like 70% of your max and then just going to go and do like 3 sets of 8 or something like that, you know?
But that would vary from person to person.
Indeed, yeah.
And beginners would potentially be able to work out a little bit more frequently, potentially, because they're probably still learning how to, in this case, maybe work their legs, and they're not really at that point where they're able to push their body specifically to train legs really hard. If that makes sense, they're miles away from their absolute strength, and we can talk about that another time. But those who have a few years under their belt tend to then be able to work their bodies a lot harder because they know how to do that, and therefore they will then need potentially to have that extra recovery or have at least a process of increasing that recovery rather than just not doing anything for a while. So to answer that question more specifically, I would probably train them on the Thursday if you smash them on a Tuesday, but I would probably just maybe go on a bike or just do some body weight squats, just get that blood flow in there and just do some mobility and stretching work. There's always some other stuff you can do that doesn't necessarily mean just doing some more weights and hypertrophy work again.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely. I've always found that a day after or the same day on leg day, if you just kind of like sit down after leg day and just go, oh, leg day, my legs are killing, and just have your feet up and do nothing and turn into a potato for the rest of the day, you're making yourself worse.
Yeah, 100%.
So what I would normally suggest to kind of relieve that muscle soreness or even, you know, subside the DOMs a little bit more before they even come on is instead of just going down, sitting down with your feet up, just, you know, relax, refuel a little bit, get your post-workout nutrition in, but then later on, maybe about 4 hours after you train, go for a walk.
Yeah, 100%. You know?
If you go for a walk, you're still moving.
And that's it. It just boils back down to active recovery. And just the worst thing people do is stay still. And coming back from a back injury, one of the worst things people do when they hurt their back is to not use it.
Yeah.
So it's the same applies to most muscle groups once you smash them up. Try and use them to some extent. Because at the end of the day as well, there's research showing that you want to be able to try and train most muscle groups twice a week. Because that's when the muscle protein synthesis has occurred, and that's when they're ready to adapt to a new stimulus. Most people who tend to do like the bro splits, for example, and don't know what they are, it's usually just splitting out the muscle groups each day. They just train them once a week.
Yeah.
But they've almost lost 2 to 3, 4 days of repeating that cycle again. So you could be training legs twice a week, so 100 times a year rather than just 50 times a year.
Yeah.
And then, so again, you're going to get more stimulus, more adaptation. But if you're doing a session that you're not recovering from to allow that, then we need to look at that session in the first place to try and get that additional frequency in. So a lot of people tend to think, oh, how am I going to, I'm going off tangent again. I know we've got half hour, but most people tend to think that, oh, I'm going to do this program to get bigger and stronger, but they forget I'm going to do this program how best to recover from the session. Does that make sense? So a lot of people forget that element of the recovery and the frequency. They just think about the session and the training and the volume per session, the intensity per session, but it needs to have a little bit more of a holistic approach to that as well. So, which is where we can come in and help.
Exactly. Well, this is it, isn't it? I mean, one of the biggest things that I've started doing with the majority of my people now is actually having a look at their heart rate variability. Now, the heart rate variability, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it is by the by, and it's one of those tools that I like using to ascertain how much recovery these people need. These are for bodybuilders as well as powerlifters as well. I've used it quite a lot, especially with Danny Malcolm. We made her actually have a complete rest week from the gym, which we hated at first. However, it has relieved so much stress. Her recovery capabilities are amazing. She has just been doing undulated recovery periods in terms of cardio, and touched no kind of weight whatsoever within the first week. We then actually did a recovery and almost like a reloading phase, going back into the gym. So again, nothing massively heavy, still concentrating on active recovery and cardio, and still making sure that her heart rate was actually very good all the way through. Now, when you can see, I mean, I still ask my clients, obviously, how they personally feel, because your heart rate variability might actually say, oh, well, you know, I'm not very good today. Maybe I should actually take a less intense day when you've got things done. But when I say, yeah, but to be fair, how are you actually feeling? And they're like, yeah, I feel all right. So it's like, mate, just crack on. You know, these kind of apps and these kind of things that you can have are all very, they're not very pinpointed, are they? They're not very specific and accurate, rather than somebody actually saying, do you know what? I'm all right. That's it. Yeah, and it's when that person turns around every single Thursday and says, do you know what, Vic, I'm absolutely fucked today. I've got to look at where that volume needs to be placed, especially with bodybuilders, because bodybuilders obviously have a higher amount of volume to do than powerlifters do. And they probably hit their sessions more frequently, like we were just talking about, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. So we've just got to figure out where we place that volume, because if every single Thursday they're absolutely fucked and on their arse, then it's like, well, do you know what? You're probably not recovering very well from the Tuesday session, and that Wednesday has just kind of tipped you over the edge. So maybe we need to look at a rest day on the Wednesday, and that way you're going to be recovered properly for the Thursday. So I suppose, yeah, like you were just saying, you've got to be consistent in where you place some volume, but you also have to get that feedback straight back from your client to ensure that they are recovering from the volume that you set them.
Yeah, and you have to also be aware of the volume and also intensity levels and how that can affect you mentally. I was listening to a podcast actually with Brett Contreras the other day, actually, and he made a really good point that when people train to failure, obviously if you're doing failure on deadlifts, maybe a set of 3, 4 or 5 reps, and I brought a gun to your head, you're not likely to be able to do another rep. If you smashed out an RP 10 on say 88% of your 1 rep max for 5 reps, the chances of you getting another one is very limited. You probably just go, oh, shoot me now. I'm not going to be able to pick it up anymore. But if you've done, say, 15 or 20 reps on something that's 50 to 60% of your 1 rep max, the likelihood of you being able to do 1 or 2 more reps to stop being shot, if we use this analogy, is probably a lot higher. So mentally doing the reps, yes, it's hard, but you're not completely draining your CNS system. But with the volume, it's different. You're breaking down the muscle tissue a lot more and really working those muscles to more of an nth degree than just doing 3 or 4 reps, obviously. So we obviously need to take that into account as well. And this is where there's so many different variations and so many different programs, and this is why so many people respond differently to all these different things out there, because some people are more attuned and better to lifting heavier weights for less reps, and other people are tuned and better, a bit more on the endurance side, to lifting lighter weights for more reps. But it's still understanding what fatigues them and what stimulates them to get the best progress out of that individual's program and hit their goals, etc. So it's an interesting topic and something we can talk for ages about. But let's answer Carla's question.
Okay, you read out the question then.
Okay, so Carla says the most beneficial mobilization drills for powerlifting, as well as for everyday fitness and functionality. ... The importance of rest and recovery and the best kind of supplements. We sort of touched on the rest and recovery already.
Yeah, I did the rest and recovery.
You can do the supplementation, mate. And the one I'd quite like to answer is how to mitigate nerves and manage expectations and mindsets for competitive athletes when they're doing powerlifting, etc. So how do you mobilize when you're training? Because obviously you're a bit of a hybrid sort of powerlifting bodybuilder. So
let's do the mobility one, because I think that one I probably won't have a chance to answer all three of those questions, Carla, because you're greedy and you're asking more than one question. How dare you? But we'll try and get through it as much as we can. So in terms of mobility, there is no realistically best option to do a mobility program for anybody, because everybody is shaped differently. So like, say for example, the mobility drills that I do are very specific to me, because I have very, very small socket joints, but quite big balls. I've got to be careful how I say that. But this is one of the reasons.
Already said it.
I know, I've already said it, but people understand what I mean. But yeah, so like, say for example, my hips cause me a lot of issues, and that's because my hip socket joint itself is very, very tight. Okay. Now for that, I need to have a lot of distraction techniques on my hip. My feet width have to be completely different. My toes have to be pointed a certain way in order to squat. And that doesn't just have to be like one certain squat. It can be any kind of squat. So a goblet squat, a hack squat, pendulum squat, whatever, or even a free bar squat. Everything has to be aligned absolutely perfectly. But the way that I have to mobilize my hips before I manage to get under that bar, I mean, I spend a real good 20, maybe 25 minutes mobilizing, getting warm, and then making sure that I'm embedded properly.
In bed. That's my movement. I'm going to sleep now.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. Some people just kind of want to go in and just get under a bar and just start squatting the bar and that kind of thing. It's like, well, you're not warm. So my personal mobilization, I'm going to take it for a squat, for example. I will do about 3 to 5 minutes on a cross trainer. That's what I'm going to do just to get my core temperature up. And I'm just going to get ready and warm and willing to get into the session. There's nothing wrong with doing that either. It's not like you're going to waste your gains or anything like that. It's just basically raising your body temperature.
Yeah. Then
after that, what I'll do is I'll do a lot of dynamic hip swings. So back, forth, sideways, opening them up. I will then also do some abductor exercises as well. So either with a band, or I'll use a cable, or if I'm in a different gym, then I'll actually use the abduction machine and really start to turn on my glutes whilst opening up my hip. So you can do the same thing by almost doing like a frog stance on the floor. So actually getting on your knees with your hips spread and just kind of pulsing a little bit back and forth. They're quite good. They don't work necessarily the best way for me, because my knees are really bony, and I've got to like go on this big mat, and it's a pain in the ass, and I really don't like it very much. So I actually use abduction machines and distraction techniques. Now the distraction that I use is using a band, and I wrap that around my right into the hip crease itself, and then just really gently I put the band around the squat rack as well, so it's like, so I'm actually walking away from the squat rack, if you can do it. And then all I do is really slowly just move my hip out at a sideways angle. So again, I'm abducting realistically, but it's the distraction. So I'm actually pulling the ball away from the socket in that kind of motion. Guys, if you're not actually watching this on YouTube, you're missing all of these vital points, but you get what I mean. And then I'll do the same, which is a forward lunge. So one knee down, forward lunge out, pushing your hip right into it and squeezing your glute, and then doing that in a pulsing movement as well. That's just for my hips. And that's just going to get me ready for my squat. There's so many different mobility techniques that you can use. I mean, there are fire hydrants that you can use as well. But one of the biggest things that I like doing for my mobility for my hips is just really activating my glutes and just making sure that I've got that ball and socket joint really nice and loose, because otherwise it's just not going to work. Get a lot of impingement, especially when I'm doing something like a leg press or a single leg press. I get a lot of impingement in that joint, and it does it proper murders it. So that's what I do for my squat realistically.
I mean, I think that's something that people need to be aware of as well. I mean, that's what you should be doing to your bench if you're properly doing powerlifting work, because your hips should be and your glutes should be involved in that. Obviously deadlifting as well. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing these mobilization drills out the gym either. Coming back from a day of work when you're relatively warm, just going on the lounge floor for 10-15 minutes, just opening up your hips, opening up your shoulder joint, doing some thoracic mobility work as well, especially if you've been sat down in the car for half hour driving, or you've been at a desk all day. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, and it's these little things that can make up a really big progressive curve on everything else, which we've alluded to before with certain athletes. I mean, myself, I think most of us would put our hands up. We've limited time that we tend to miss out the warming up phase regarding just going on the bike or a cross trainer 3-5 minutes. I actually quite enjoy getting on the bar quite quickly. I know that's different to what you say, but again, it's coming back to my individual preferences. I quite like getting on, just if it's just the open bar, basically just the empty bar, even just doing a few squats and then doing some mobility work, doing some more squats to the bar, and then doing more mobility work, and just feeling how better it is after doing your crucifixes with your back, or your frog glutes work that you've been mentioning as well. I like to start getting into the swing of things straight away. One of my favorite ones is the groiner stand-ups, which again is quite similar to your frog stuff, but you just basically just have your feet in the slightly wider squat position, put your elbows inside your knees, squat down, and then just try and push your knees out by pushing your arms to the side, and then just a few sort of squat pulses. Then I just hold my feet, and then I stand up whilst holding my feet to get a good hamstring stretch, and then just pulse it in again and open up. That's one of my favorite things to do. And with bench, got the sort of wall angel work, because my external rotation is shocking. I quite like doing that, and I just a lot of band work, like you say, just activating dynamically, just band pull aparts and just sort of scapular retractions. I quite like hanging onto the bar and then just not pulling up per se, but just squeezing my shoulder blades back and in, and just sort of raising my chest up. That's another really good one as well. But like you said, it's being specific to what works for you. Touch with my hips are really quite good, so I don't need to spend too much time on them. I can do the splits almost, but my shoulders are rubbish, so I spend a lot more time on those than I would do if they weren't.
Exactly.
So I think we've answered that one. I think so.
I think it again just comes down to specificity, because it's like we were saying previously, we can program certain accessories that you need in order to make a lift better because of your weaker body part, and it's like we were saying, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Now, my weakest link in accordance with my bench is going to be my triceps and my rear delts. So I've got to seriously work on my accessory work in terms of my triceps and my rear delts. And it's not about aesthetics, it's about that strength.
Balance.
Exactly. So you can program certain accessories to do, and there's a reason why there are certain accessories programmed. It's not just like a generic, right, we'll do this, do that, and do the other, and then I can't think of anything else, so have it there. And if a coach does do that, then you should probably go running really fast in the opposite direction, because you're not going to get stronger just by spending more time under the bar. You do have to accumulate the volume in the other accessory muscles, because it's your accessory muscles that are going to help you make the lift. And it's the same with mobility techniques. If you are not analyzed properly to see how your squat stance is, how your bench press is, like that groiner stand-up that you were just talking about, there's no way I'd be able to do that. No. Because my hip mobility shit, so there's no way that I would be able to do it. I'd have to do it in squat shoes, and my ankle range is crap. So I know that I wouldn't be able to do that and actually do the stand-up. So for me, prescribing that as a mobility issue or a mobility drill would just not help me at all. It would probably hinder me, because I'd probably just end up getting sore and hurt. So again, it does come down to you specifically. So Carla, I'm sorry if it's that bloody old age answer of it depends, and it is dependent. It is person specific and person dependent. So the best advice that we could probably give you is have a trial of absolutely every kind of mobility drill that you can find and you can muster, or get a decent analysis done, and then we can obviously prescribe you a good mobility drill for that.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool.
Best supplements to help recovery.
Food and sleep.
Food and sleep. Good.
It's as simple as that. There's only one there's only one supplement that I would actually help in terms, or actually recommend in terms of recovery, and that's ashwagandha.
Okay.
The only thing. The reason why I do that is because ashwagandha is a cortisol management tool, and it helps relieve your cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormone. It obviously can go up. Your training is a stressing stimulus, and what you want to be able to do is you want to get back into a nice state in order to recover and eat your food and digest your food. Now, a lot of people do not take into account that we have 3 systems that work in tandem all the time, and that's your sympathetic system, your parasympathetic nervous system, and your enteric nervous system. Now, the enteric nervous system is the one that really gets hit because all of the bros in the gym finish up doing their program and then immediately slam the squat bar down and then go and grab their protein shake, thinking that if they do not have that in that window,
have that within 15 minutes, though, Vicky.
You know what? 15-minute magic window of gains. If they do not do it and they don't shake it up in a specific manner while standing on their head and looking in the easterly direction of the wind, then they are not going to make that muscle growth. They really just aren't. Obviously, we now know that that's bullshit because it doesn't happen like that. However, if you are to actually go and sit down and have a solid meal whilst your stress levels are still very, very, very high from the training stimulus, you're not actually going to digest that very well. So what I like to actually tell everybody to do is just to kind of have a rest, have a relax, get back home, chill out a little bit, maybe prep your food. And as it's prepping, go and have a shower, chill. And then you can sit down and actually be mindful and be aware of what you're eating, because that way you're actually going to, 1, savor it, and 2, be present in the moment of how you're eating it, which means that you are going to digest it and absorb those nutrients properly. So that's what I would say in terms of the best kind of supplementation for recovery is food and eating at the right time. So you are not in this highly stressed state whilst you're trying to eat. You know, you don't want to be in that flight or fight syndrome when you're eating. You want to be in the rest and digest one. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that I would do, is actually take into account the time of when you eat, how you eat, and so you can absorb it properly. Ashwagandha is absolutely brilliant in terms of reducing those cortisol levels. I personally recommend Support Max Neuro because it has got added lion's mane into it as well. So for neurological focus, it is very good. So especially if you have done a big workout, you can take that ashwagandha about 35 minutes to 45 minutes after you train, especially if you have some neurologically demanding tasks to do after your workout, like say you've got to go to work. That would be really, really beneficial. In terms for joint health and anti-inflammatory purposes, curcumin is very good. There are different types of curcumin that you can get now, and I can't actually remember the complete ones off the top of my head, but I will put them in the comment section below. So curcumin is very, very good. However, you do need to have the ones that are laced with black pepper extract or bioperine. That's actually helping the uptake of it. So curcumin is very good for that one. Magnesium, also an amazing recovery tool. There's lots, again, of different types of magnesium. There's one that's called magnesium citrate. You want to be careful of that one because that one will make you have the shits. So don't have that one, especially if you're going to, manage to do it. But it does actually help you go to sleep. It helps a lot with women's health as well. And it helps with recovery capabilities from a stress.
I just looked at my magnesium and it says magnesium citrate, but touch wood.
Yeah, you've got the
I'm all right at the moment.
Yeah, it's magnesium glycinate that is a very good one for recovery purposes. But again, I can list all of these in the comment section box. And then the other one, there isn't really another one, to be perfectly honest, not for recovery capabilities, but for recovery, I think those are the ones that I would really do. But the only way that you are going to recover to the best of your ability is by resting, by getting your sleep proper and having good quality sleep as well. So it's not just having a kip for 7 hours, it's actually having a good amount of deep sleep, because that is where you're actually going to recover and repair all of those muscle fibers that you have broken down in the gym. And then getting your food on point, so making sure you have got the correct dosages of macros and calories that are for you in accordance with your goal.
Yeah, it's basics, isn't it? Do the
Absolutely.
basics well.
You get the basics done first. Supplements are like the little icing on the cake, but if you don't actually have the cake batter, what's the point? It just isn't going to work for you.
I agree.
But anyway,
I agree.
moving on.
And her last bit was how to mitigate nerves and manage expectations for competitive athletes like powerlifters.
Right, well, you take this question away whilst my dog goes mad, because I've got a delivery. So you go ahead with that one, and I'm going to stop my dog from having an attack.
I'll just pretend you're still there, though. Just helps me mentally to talk. So basically, I think what people just need to be aware of when they are competing is that you will always have nerves. And the more experienced you become, the more you'll be able to control those nerves, hopefully, because you'll be more aware of your surroundings and the situation. Having said that, obviously we all start first and foremost doing something we haven't done before, and to try and mitigate those nerves, I think we just really need to make sure that that person is fully confident to be able to hit those numbers, for example, if they are doing powerlifting. So for example, we want to trying to aim for excellence during our training sessions, and obviously with our sleep and recovery, etc. But we also don't want to be too predetermined, because I was thinking about this question earlier. We don't want to be too predetermined with what results we get on the day, especially if you're just starting out. Because, so for example, let's take your bench press. Your first one at the British Champs was 60. That went well, and we had 65 predetermined, but that didn't go up. Now, for some people, that wouldn't be a problem. That wasn't overly a problem with you mentally, but having that predetermined figure can sometimes really knock someone back and increase nerves and anxiety. We've got someone, don't mind mentioning him, Danny, who's a highly experienced lifter, but if she doesn't get that first squat in, then all of a sudden her arousal levels, her nervous energy doubles and triples. And for her, just getting on with it is the best way to mitigate that, because deep down, and this is where it comes to being deep down, though you can lift these weights, is the key to mitigate these nerves and manage expectations. But it's quite hard to find that sort of that dichotomy between having goals to aim for, but don't be too hugely cut up about a predetermined attempt selection, for example, because things happen there. You might wake up and just feel rubbish. You might, not make weight, not under your guidance, obviously, but and then have to go and that starts stressing you out. You might have to go and do some rowing or go for a run to try and come back in. So you should have ballpark figures, but try not to be completely focused on the weight itself, because at the end of the day, you should be really just focusing on how you're going to lift the weight and go in there confident. Because I sometimes do like a dress rehearsal, especially for new people, 2-3 weeks out, that I'm happy with the weights they're going to lift, and so they're happy that weights going to lift. So if they've done it in the gym, it doesn't always translate, but it gives them that expectation that they can at least attempt it at the competition. But if it doesn't quite go to plan, don't worry about it. it's almost that simple. It's the prep is in the weeks and the months before the comp, and then you almost have to have that. Okay, what will be on the day. Yeah. And then just take each lift as it comes. If you, like I say, you keep focusing on the predetermined outcome, and if you don't get quite the right amount of lights on one lift, then all of a sudden that can really cave in your confidence and affect the rest of your meet. So it's understanding that it's just one lift at a time, and then just play it by ear after that. Yeah, I think it's a really good question, but it's also it's almost like life in a way. People want to make all the problems go away and they think they're going to have a happy life. Or actually, if you've been given the skill set to deal with those problems, then you're going to be in for a better, happier life. Because life is not for the problems, no matter whether it's outside the gym or inside the gym. It's being able to deal with that is that's what you want to really be conscious of. So
yeah, definitely. It is a really good question as well, isn't it? Because again, it comes down to lifter specific. Because like with Danny, for example, it's well, you know what, we're just going to follow the plan and just go for your heavier lift.
yeah,
You know, sod off if you actually did that. But it's like with that 65 that we had on my bench and my shoulder just gave way, there was no way that I could have said, well, no, it's all right, let's go for 67.5 because I had that 65. But the thing is that I knew I had that 65. I've repped it that many times in the gym. It's like, yeah, it's easy. And I've gone from 60 to 65. What happened? Shit happened. My shoulder. There was literally nothing that we could have done about it. And just obviously putting more stress on your shoulder and your internalization of that lift as well by going a little bit heavier. For us at that point, we knew that it was going to be the best idea to just do 65 at that point. And the second attempt at the 65 went up.
It did.
But it cleared out a little bit.
You just lost it on technicality, didn't you?
Yeah, lost it on technicality. I was like, technical? Really? I've done that with a fucking dislocated shoulder.
but this is where it. But when you were out for a second, this is what I was saying. This is again, it depends on the lifter, and also it's you can't underestimate the importance of experience. I mean, for those who are new to a sport, whether it be powerlifting, bodybuilding, I keep telling people, even though they might be uber competitive, just go there, get your first lift in, because that's the most important one, and then we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be going, right, your first is going to be this, your second is going to be that, your first is going to be that, because hopefully your first will always be in. But if your second one doesn't fly or go, or you just mess it up, for example, then all of a sudden that third one's out of the picture.
Sure.
And the subtotal after your bench might be now out of the picture, and all of a sudden you start cascading away from the overall goal of just doing your best on each lift.
Yeah, because you're just going to set yourself up for disappointment for everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then that's one really good way of just taking away those nerves and that pressure a bit. Just be aware that as long as you can look yourself in the mirror on the day of the morning, that you've done everything you can to lift as well as you can on that day. Let's just see what happens.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying, don't be completely apathetic. Oh yeah, whatever. Blah. I don't really care. You know what? I'm just gonna do like 100 on the squat. I know I've done 200 in the gym, but as long as I get it in, it's fine. No, I'm not meaning like that.
No.
I'm meaning just be confident with the weight that you have set, and then see what happens after that weight.
Yeah.
And yeah, but we've done chats before, and I've done videos before on what roughly your temp should be if we're going to powerlifting specific. So if you have a look at that and let me know, or just give us a question on the feed, and I'll answer it anyway. And I think the best way to mitigate nerves, don't worry about it too much.
Yeah, exactly. Chill inside. That's what we're gonna do. Just chill. Right, so we have gone over our half an hour time total. So if we haven't answered your question, we do apologize. However, we are going to be doing these podcasts a little bit more frequently now. So please keep on making sure that you are writing in some questions. Either slide into us DMs, because we do answer all of them as and when we can. So do that for us, and then we'll keep on putting shout outs and saying that we're going to be doing some. So obviously ask us any kind of questions on training, supplementation, or recovery, or food. Food is always good. And then, like I said, we'll answer them on the next podcasts. So thank you very much, guys, for tuning in, and we will catch up with you next time. Bye-bye.